I think we would all probably agree that it's wise not to poke your nose into other people's business, and certainly not to interfere in family squabbles or disagreements, what can be roughly described as domestics. You know, people do have domestics. Well, don't get involved. Leave them to work things out for themselves. It's none of our business. All good sound advice. When I used to prepare young couples for marriage, we'd spend some time talking about good communication skills, the do's and don'ts that help couples avoid or at least minimise the tensions that inevitably are going to emerge when two lives begin to interact so closely, not just at particular times of intimacy, but all the time, each day, every day. And we'd talk about conflict. And sometimes couples would naively imagine that would never arise for them because they were so much in love with each other. But the seeds of conflict are already sown in the separate lives of each of them. They come together with so much of themselves already established, as it were, shaped by all sorts of factors: temperament, upbringing, social conditioning, education, natural likes and dislikes, and so on. And they all conspire to make us, as individuals, unique. And so for the couple coming together in marriage, it's not long before they discover that the honeymoon is soon over and conflict arises. The couple have to learn how to give and take, how to adjust to each other, make sacrifices, compromise on what's not essential while respecting and affirming what is essential to the other. Is it any wonder that conflicting personalities should sometimes clash? And when they do, it's not a sign that they don't still love and respect each other, that they've made a big mistake, and that they're really unsuited for each other. No, conflict is a sign, if anything, that they are taking the differences seriously. They are recognizing the inviolate dignity and value of one another, not trying to force one set of values on the other or to demand silent compliance from the other for the sake of peace. Both of those are recipes for disaster. Perhaps at times it can help to call in a competent counsellor to help them negotiate a particular difficult time and realise a solution that is acceptable to both. But for the most part, couples are the best equipped to deal with those domestics, and we must respect that and not take sides. That doesn't mean that we should simply turn a blind eye and pretend that all is well and simply avoid all mention of things altogether, but equally, it's important not to take sides, for that stokes the fires of discontent on one side through a false sense of friendship or concern. It's interference, and it can actually make things worse. Having said that, there are occasions when you find yourself facing a conflict situation, not a domestic, but one that is actually being played out on the public stage, and where basic human rights and freedoms and standards of decency are being openly flouted. And it can happen at any level: local, community, nationally, or even internationally. We've seen it recently in the genocide perpetrated in our own generation, in Rwanda, Myanmar, Syria, and China. We've seen it in the callous treatment of political refugees and in the persecution of peoples of colour, of race, and sexual orientation. We've seen it in the increasing lack of respect for vulnerable life at its beginning and at its end. It's good that governments, as well as individuals, are now willing to be just as public and vocal in their condemnation of such rampant violations of human rights and freedoms. That's not interference. It's a necessary response in the name of civilized society and in the defence of humanity itself and of the common good. I know that it can all seem a bit remote, far removed from the day-to-day conflicts going on in our own daily routines, but really they are the same issues that are at stake nearer to home itself. Decency, goodness, fairness, justice, a concern for the vulnerability of others and those with no voice, victims of people who want to throw their weight around and impose their will on others no matter the cost. It can happen in front of us, and then it's not possible to simply turn a blind eye and walk away. Somebody has to do something, and if that somebody is me, then so be it. I remember a little incident from my own experience when I found myself stepping in where angels fear to tread to diffuse a public confrontation. I was a young seminarian at the time, on holiday in my hometown in Bathgate here in Scotland. One day, in the centre of the town, I came across a small crowd gathered round a shop front, and people were straining to see what was going on, but everyone was keeping a safe distance. Well, I went over to find out what the fuss was all about, and through the crowd I glimpsed a former classmate of mine, a school classmate, one who, without being uncharitable, would be described as a hard man. He was a real thug. And he was holding another lad by the hair and was rhythmically banging his head against the glass front. Well, I pushed my way through and I simply spoke his name, and he turned and he recognised me and he said, "Hi Hugh, good to see you. Are you home on holiday? How's it going?" And all the while he kept banging the poor fellow's head against this window pane. Anyway, I took heart and I said, "Why don't you let him go before you kill him?" "Aye, okay," said, and with one final bang of the head, he let him go, and the poor fella scampered for his life. The crowd wandered off, leaving the two of us to talk and for me to ask him what it was all about. On that occasion, I got away with sticking my nose in because the boy knew me and didn't go down the usual path of saying, "Who do you think you are? What's it got to do with you?" So I came out of it all really unscathed, which is more than could be said for the poor lad whose head had been battered. I'm not sure if I might just have been as brave in different circumstances, but I hope I would not just turn a blind eye and walk away when I see someone being publicly disrespected or abused or being treated badly. In today's Gospel, we see Jesus faced with a situation that evidently touched a raw nerve and roused him to anger, righteous anger. His Father's house, a sacred place, was being desecrated. The temple, a place for prayer, for God, not a place, but his place, had become a commoner garden market, a place of dodgy dealing and underhand practices, a real slap in the face to all people of genuine faith, God-loving people. It's the equivalent of the attitude today which dismisses religion and wants to forbid any and every public manifestation of religious conviction, any display of faith whatsoever, because such religion and its claims, in their estimation, are powerful rivals to their own ideologies and agendas, which they would happily impose on everybody with a ruthlessness greater than they attribute to religion itself. Remember the wise words of G.K. Chesterton, the celebrated Catholic writer and social critic. The problem of disbelieving in God is not that a man ends up believing nothing. Alas, it is much worse. He ends up believing anything. And that's when people become dangerous, especially if they are in positions of influence and power. In the incident in the temple, Jesus showed his true colours. Human as any one of us, capable of righteous anger and justifiable protest against flagrant and public disregard for people and their beliefs. He couldn't just ignore it. There was too much at stake. The incident evidently made an impact on the early Christians, for it's recorded in all 4 of the Gospels, each of course giving its own particular slant. Today's version is the one from St. John's Gospel, and it differs from the other 3 in 2 very distinct and significant ways. First of all, the other 3 Gospels have located this incident at the end of Jesus' public ministry, suggesting that Jesus had interfered once too often. But John has chosen to locate it at the very start of Jesus' ministry. It encapsulates the whole point of Jesus coming and being among us, to restore God to his proper place in this world and to raise awareness of God's presence all around us. God trying to catch our attention, to get through to us and help us embrace life and live it to the full. And secondly, in the first 3 Gospels, Jesus is intent on cleansing the temple and restoring it to us as a sacred place. But in the 4th Gospel, Jesus goes much further. He's now talking about replacing the temple, this sacred symbol of stone, and in its place building a new temple, a new symbol of God's continuing presence and offer of life. A temple built of living people, a living body, his body, the church. And that's us, you and me and millions of others, who now are to stand up fearlessly and speak out and take action wherever humanity is threatened or exploited or denied its basic rights and freedoms. We have to stand up and say no. For as St. Teresa of Avila put it so well, Christ has no body now but yours, no hands, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks with compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. You have to get involved in his name. It's not interfering, it's being responsible. Take care. God bless.